What if your life changed forever at 52 and the world just shrugged? When dementia hits early, it doesn't just rob memories, it steals careers, parenting roles, independence. Karen Thomas from Dementia Forward joins us to talk about young onset dementia, what makes it different, and why the voices of those living it need to be heard now more than ever. If you are caring for someone else, whether paid or unpaid, and no matter how many hours you do it, did you realise that you may be missing out on thousands of pounds of discounts for things that you may use every day? The Able to Care podcast is proud to be sponsored by the UK's #1 carers card. Started by two best friends who recognise that carers deserve better and are 100% committed to helping to change the lives of all carers and bringing them together as a strong community. Carers Card UK provides support, recognition and rewards. It offers reassurance by providing an ID card that helps access emergency information when needed, while also unlocking discounts, a wellbeing hub, a carers circle tool and a community through their app. All of this for less than the price of a box of chocolates a year. There are discounts on gym membership, days out, electrical goods, clothing and even glasses. Let others know you care while taking a little care of yourself with an ID card you can be proud of. Visit carerscarduk.co.uk/promo code/able to care today to order yours. Hello and welcome to the Able to Care podcast. I'm your host, Andy Baker, and today we're diving into a topic that is heartbreakingly misunderstood: young onset dementia. Our guest, Karen Thomas, head of Young Onset at Dementia Forward, a charity doing powerful, practical work across North Yorkshire and beyond. Karen has been instrumental in shaping the charity's support model for people diagnosed under 65 and their families. She's also at the heart of the You and Me campaign, an initiative that's building a national voice for those affected, using everything from peer support to poetry, music, and a bold vision for change. In this episode, we'll unpack what makes Young Onset different, what support actually looks like, and how Dementia Forward are blending creativity, community, and compassion to create something truly unique. So Karen, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
No worries. So obviously a bit of an introduction there, but would you mind taking us back to that moment that you first got involved with supporting people living with young onset dementia and what kind of pulled you into it?
Yeah, so my background is actually in machine embroidery. But I found that it wasn't giving me what I needed from work. I wanted to kind of give back more and do more for people. So I became an adult education tutor, and I specialised in working with vulnerable adults. But again, that became untenable. I didn't have a very measured life. I wasn't earning a steady wage. And so I sort of started to cast around for somewhere that I could work, which sort of modelled the way I wanted to work and the sorts of mission I wanted to kind of be part of. And Dementia Forward just kind of was a really clear winner in that. So I became a volunteer for Dementia Forward. And the Dementia Forward story is that we have 7 founder members who created the charity they left a national charity on the Friday and they started Dementia Forward on the Monday. And within 18 months, they had won 3 of the 6 health lots across North Yorkshire. So I came on at that time when there were staff being tupied and there was a bit of staff movement. And I ended up working with Young Onset because I came in as a support advisor, but the Time Out Together group had literally just started. So Time Out Together is a group that we run specifically for younger people with dementia. It's an outward bound group where we go different places every single week. So when I came on board, my background in adult education and organising classes and working with people really, really met that well. So I was a support advisor when I came, but then I also ran the Time Out Together groups as well and went out with them every week.
Fantastic. So for those who don't know, what exactly is young onset dementia and how does it differ from other forms in terms of impact and the needs of the individuals?
Young onset dementia is sort of termed or we refer to it as a person who has experienced symptoms under the age of 65. So to put that into context, the youngest person we've ever supported was 37. The youngest person at the moment is 46. Generally, we meet people in their mid to late 50s, but quite often early 60s, and actually over that age as well, because diagnosis can take so long that people are experiencing symptoms before the age of 65, but they still need support and they will still be considered a person with young onset dementia after that. But the things that people experience are very different as well. They are people essentially in the momentum of their lives. So it's people of working age. So it's people really like you and me. We have named our campaign You and Me because we are working together. But originally we were going to call it You or Me because it could be any of us. So we can look at how our lives sort of work. So as working people, generally, when we go out to work, our working life will the routine of it will kind of, dictate what time we get up in the morning, and it'll dictate maybe what we wear, perhaps what we have for breakfast, whether it's a rush breakfast out of the house or how we do dinner when we get back at night because of the time. And the time scale of that day, what time you might get home and things like that. And I think people with young onset dementia so often lose their ability to be at work because they're asked to leave quite often, which is a whole other topic in itself. But losing that structure and that routine is a massive thing that happens to families and can have quite a profound effect.
Yeah. It's that sense of identity, isn't it, that we so associate with what we do for a living, where we fall within our family unit. There's the hobbies we have, the communities we belong to, all help us to recognize who we are or label ourselves as who we are. And then suddenly that one new label that's get added to a person as far as this diagnosis is concerned can potentially destroy all of those elements or significant amounts and cause this kind of this chaos in who this person now knows who they are.
Yeah, and we see, so there's lots of complexities when it comes to the infrastructure around caring and supporting people with young onset dementia. But within the family environment, there are many different challenges because a person is younger. So, for example, financially, I mean, that's a huge issue, is that people are not of pension age. You can't draw your pension until you're 55. So financially, there can be a big hit. And if a person has been asked to leave work, then generally a partner is still at work. So they're still maintaining those kind of family finances. But they may also have children that they're caring for, and then they're also caring for a partner. So relationships change as well. And again, that changes identity. That can be extremely difficult. And we see huge amounts of living loss, we call it, because there's small nuances of how we live, like sitting down to maybe watch Netflix together, or, parenting and discussing what you might do about a situation, or maybe talking about finances together. All those things can add up to just small losses all the time, which just add up to, a carer potentially taking on more and more. People are often as well extremely physically fit. So you have like changes in cognition, but that ability to still need to do things physically. So our well-being looks different for everybody. I like to swim, but I know that wouldn't be what other people would like to do necessarily when I am swimming outdoors. But we support people who still want to cycle. They still want to go climbing. They back in the day when we first started supporting people with young onset dementia, we had a man who was a marathon runner, and we had a member of staff who would go out running with him because that's what he needed to do. So yes, all sorts of things. Friends not engaging as well. That's really common, that actually friends start to step away because they're, for all sorts of reasons, but not really sure how they can help, feel like they're stepping on toes. The person that they know isn't quite the same anymore, so they're not quite sure how to communicate. And, and that support network, if that steps away as well, we see a lot of people feeling more isolated. So yeah, and on a bigger scale, that makes a difference too.
I think that's something I've come across quite a lot, actually, is that, there's quite a lot of statistics showing that people with terminal illnesses tend to lose all their friends. And it is that people really struggle with knowing how to empathize. I think I don't know what to say, or I find it hard. I don't know how to support. And as you said, don't know how to step on the toes. And I think there's a two-way conversation that needs to happen there. And I always kind of, one is that, you've got to be bold, and sometimes it's okay not to know what to say. It's better to kind of say the wrong thing than just completely withdraw and ignore and dismiss, because that's also as painful for both parties. And it's okay to just go, I've got no idea what I can say to make things better, but I just want you to know I'm here, and hey, whatever I need you to do, I'm here for it. But I think also it's being the families themselves being bold enough to go, it's not a personal thing. It is, I never attribute to malice what could be attributed to ignorance. And they just don't know. They don't know how to deal with it. They don't have support. So actually be bold enough to go, hey, can you come round? Because we'd love to see you. And just come and hey, could you come to this? And be willing to ask the questions or ask for the help, which is really hard.
Yeah, and we see as well, we see as well friends who are devastated by what they see, and actually they can't cope emotionally with what they're witnessing, and therefore they also step away for that reason. So, but even then, you see, I think that there's always things that people can do, just to go and do the shopping, and those routines that we have in our life can become really difficult. So any kind of help in that nature, of a practical nature, is also, really beneficial for families. So, but you're right, yeah.
I remember having a podcast conversation actually with a lady called Charlie Beswick, who's a parent carer. And she gave me this wonderful bit of advice in there, which I thought was absolutely spot on, which is all carers, when asked, how are you doing? Are you okay? The instinct is just to go, fine. And actually they need to be brave enough to go, do you know what? I'm having a really tough day, but thank you so much for asking. And just that, thank you so much for asking is the end. I don't need more, but I'm just going to be honest with you that I am actually having a tough time and going through some stuff. And I think people just tend to just go, fine.
I have a friend who, if people are going through a tough time, she literally just does what she thinks they would need anyway. So she would leave the shopping on the doorstep without asking. She just does it, which is a good way of looking at it
too. Without the expectations and the discomfort of asking for it, or being or gratitude for it as well, because that can sometimes feel really hard for people. That's lovely. Yeah. That's really nice. So what surprises you the most, when walking alongside these families and supporting them? Is there anything that's kind of stood out to you?
Yeah, the courage, the inspiration, how amazing people are, how people cope and manage the situations that they find themselves in their lives, the amount of pressure that people can deal with, really. We see so many really capable people. So, wives, husbands, partners, daughters, sons, who apply their capability to caring for a person when things are when a situation could be becoming untenable. They just keep going, and they have an expectation that they need to keep going without necessarily having help. And I think just people are amazing. So really, I would say that, yeah, people are amazing, and it makes my job, it makes our job at Dementia Forward just such a privilege. So I would say that, but also when we first started to support people with young onset dementia, essentially that was in our first time out together group. So the group was created because our CEO Jill, who I know you have spoken to, she was approached when Dementia Forward first won those 3 contracts. She was approached by a carer in her 50s who was really concerned that she would lose the only support that she had for her husband, who was accessing support in the community. And it turned out that support was in a hospital, in a windowless room. They were doing word searches and they were eating hospital food. And Jill thought, I think we can do this better. So she got a Red Cross bus and driver, a member of the memory clinic seconded to Dementia Forward for 1 day a week. And then we started taking people out on the bus. But what that meant was that as support advisors, as a support system, we were spending a day a week consistently with people with young onset, and we were working with families as well and learning what the value of having that day was to our carers. And so in our normal support work, Dementia Forward is very much our core service is support and advice. So we have support advisors that go to people's homes, they give them support and advice as is needed there, and we create a bespoke relationship with that family so that as changes occur, we're there sort of to fill the gaps. So when it came to our young onset clients, we found that we didn't have the infrastructure to signpost to. So if you take a person who wants to go cycling, there is a brilliant charity that provide carers time off. They provide volunteers to spend time with people, but those volunteers, we were asking for them to to alter their risk assessments and to have volunteers who were able to go out on bikes and were physically fit and able to do that. And people who, might be of a similar age to our clients, but not at work. And so we were asking a whole different set of requests so that when we created my role, when Dementia Forward won all 6 contracts across North Yorkshire, and we decided actually somebody needs to do something about young onset dementia, we created a role. And then what surprised me was how much there was to do, how many gaps there were. There are so many gaps, and we still keep finding them. Every sort of topic has another 5 or 6 threads to it. There's work happening at the moment, I think with Dementia UK, especially where they're finding that children within families can be neglected because there's so much for one person to be doing. So there's research going into that. There's so many complex presentations. There was no respite that was appropriate for people that needed to book it ahead. No young onset specific provision for care. People, and still are, being in when a person needs care. We've got 50-year-olds living with 80 or 90-year-olds, and actually the environment isn't appropriate. So we've been working on that, and really unusual things as well, like even some of our younger male clients being arrested, but they're kind of, to us, they are a really vulnerable person who is physically fit, but they're arrested in a way that feels really quite brutal to us because they're a vulnerable person. But I think from the police perspective, they're an aggressive man that they need to get to the ground and handcuff. And so there's all sorts of areas. So I think that would be another surprise, was that there were so many things to do. The coding, young onset dementia isn't coded. So people are invisible in the stats. The slowness of the diagnosis, that would be another surprise.
Yeah, you mentioned there a couple of times actually about the difficulty and the challenges to get a diagnosis. Obviously, working with quite a number of different individuals. Do you know what the average is as far as diagnostics time and stuff?
I don't know what the average is for people with young onset. I know, so I know that we support a man who it took 7 years to get a diagnosis. Often, it's not unusual for me to hear that people have had about a 4-year diagnostic kind of wait. Some people it's within a year, and I think probably averagely it's probably about 2 years, under 2 years. But it's slow because so many of the symptoms mirror other diagnoses, and what doctor wants to give somebody a terminal diagnosis, so of course they investigate everything, and that takes time. They'll go into B12, and for women, menopause often, or depression or anxiety, and all those things are investigated, and then the time adds up. But it means that people lose time, and there are different areas where it's being approached differently. So certainly in Scarborough, if a person is showing cognitive changes, they will try and eliminate a dementia diagnosis as soon as possible. So they do it the other way around. But yeah, it's very difficult for families.
It seems like the right way of doing it, isn't it? It should be the most, essential, or the one that requires the earliest intervention should be looked at first and then kind of roll back, rather than the other way around. I think it's sometimes, well, let's see if we can fix this quick first. It's like fighting the fire rather than looking at what's causing the fire in the first place, kind of thing, which is a shame across the system a little bit.
And I think expense is a big thing for people with young onset. So it's more expensive to diagnose, to go through brain scans and to do all those sorts of things for people. But actually, if we take that as a theme, it is more expensive to support and, have provision for people with young onset as well. Because one of the reasons for that, I think also, when it comes to provision, is that people are of a minority. It's a minority. So I pulled up some stats from our database, and at the moment, and I think Jill mentioned this as well, but at the moment we support 4,892 families across the whole of North Yorkshire and York, and 429 of those are people experiencing young onset dementia. So that is, I think it's about, I didn't do the maths, but it's 9.5 or 9.8%.
It's about 10%, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about that. And nationally, there's been a review that would say that 7.5% is the national average of people being diagnosed with young onset dementia. So we're supporting higher than the national average, but still, those people, if you take it that they're completely across North Yorkshire, which we were told was the size of Belgium. North Yorkshire is enormous, and it's got so many different cultures in it. And, we've got farming communities and cities and coastal communities, and those people are spread right across that whole patch, that we need to bring people together. So, but it's more expensive, of course, because there's fewer people, and needs are different as well. So
you've mentioned quite a lot there as far as things that don't work in the system, whether it be the diagnostics or the support, and I say the funding being a big part of that. So how are you guys kind of beginning to map the kinds of support that the individuals and the families actually need?
Okay, so I personally try to make sense of the scale by dividing it into three kind of categories of work. So we've got the work that we do at Dementia Forward to support our clients. So we now have 3 time out together groups. One has closed recently because we're looking at how we can do that differently. Again, because of different cultures, there's a different approach required. So we have 3 of those. All our support advisors need a different toolbox when they go and meet people, because they're signposting, but they need to be signposting to different areas, to different things that people need. And we try and get people together socially. So we call them social gatherings. We're trying to get people together all the time so they can meet each other and create their own network. And then we do a lot of training and, awareness raising. So on the next bracket, that would be like our community and partnership work. So those are the things that we at Dementia Forward just can't do. We're not, from where we're placed within the community, we just can't do them. And an excellent example of that would be care. We don't run care homes, but we can consult, and everything, all the information that we have comes directly from our clients, because we're in conversation with them. We have a relationship with them. So we consult, and there is a care home now that exists in York, and another that's sprung from that in Gateshead. And actually, what we're finding is that the other providers, I think there's 4 providers at the moment in conversation about creating young onset provision for people in care and respite. So we can't do that ourselves, but we work with people to do that. People with young onset often need volunteering opportunities so they can still be doing meaningful activity and work. We need financial advisors. We need legal advisors who actually understand the complexities. counsellors, who understand the scale of the living loss that we see and the pressures that people are experiencing. So I would say that is and also sometimes quite often we're working with professionals as well. So perhaps the funding teams, the hospital, if people are being taken into our mental health wards, that is kind of our community partnership level. And then I would say our national level. So we realised that we've been doing this a while now. It's 12 years that we've been supporting people with young onset. And so we've learned a lot. And we recognised that once we stepped into doing this role, that actually it's a real postcode lottery. We're the only charity supporting people pre-diagnosis to end of life. And for young onset. But there are also just so many amazing charities out there as well, and people doing the most fantastic work that we also need to learn from, because nobody knows everything and we need to learn too. And so we created a campaign to raise awareness for young onset. And that happened really because we had the desire to do that. And also we had a referral for a man, Jonathan, who also wanted to make a difference. He had a very dynamic friend who also wanted to make a difference. And together that momentum meant that we created the You and Me campaign. And as part of the campaign, we created Young Onset Dementia Awareness Day on Jonathan's birthday. We released a track that was written by Jill's son, which is really emotive. I mean, I see that as a real soundtrack really to young onset dementia. A lot of the lyrics are quotes from Jonathan, from a person with young onset dementia, and he plays the guitar on it, and it so clearly demonstrates what people can do with dementia, because our work is to help people live well and have good well-being as much as possible. And Jonathan, during the recording of that track, he was unable to play 3 chords that the studio needed him to play. He was unable to read the music because of his Alzheimer's, but he does the most amazing improvisation at the end, which is just so shows what people can do. And then, of course, we're opening a centre of excellence, and we have just recruited. We're doing a knowledge transfer partnership with Leeds Beckett University, which is an amazing partnership where we've recruited a lady who will start at the end of September, who is a researcher, and the role is to do research and innovation. Yeah. So we'll pull together everything that we've learned, everything that's out there, and we will create, packages of blueprints, really, training with yourself, and we hope, a technology centre as well. And then the other part of our campaign, of course, is the conference.
Yes, I'll come on to that in a second. So, yeah, I actually played the You and Me song to my staff team. They didn't know what it was, but it's, they thought it was it's a beautiful song. It really is. And we will make sure we put a link in the description and things like that to the song itself, the YouTube video. So thank you for sending it over, and we'll make sure we link that in.
Thank you. That'd be great, Andy, because the more downloads and plays we get of that, the better. The more it's heard and the more it's seen. And eventually, I think if we get 1 million plays, I think we then start to get some money that we can use for the campaign.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's it. The kind of videos that are out there that do earn money, and then you've got something that's genuinely worthwhile and beautiful that we would hope would earn money. So you've got this conference coming up on October the 14th, 2025, so this year. So what can people expect if they attend, and why is this more than just another awareness day?
So this is our 3rd conference that we've done. So our previous 2, we've been able to have about 100 delegates. Mm-hmm. So this time we've gone bigger. We want to have at least 400 delegates there in the room. So we chose Elland Road because of the connection with Jonathan, who is the face of our campaign, but also practicalities, and also the connection with football as well. So head injuries, but also that football clubs do a lot of work for people with dementia to make matches and their work accessible. So that's why we're there. And I think if delegates come to the conference, there'll be a huge amount of learning. We've got a variety of topics that we're going to be covering, including our mental health wards and the funding that often people experience from being held under Section 3. We have people with lived experience speaking to us. We're obviously going to do the football theme as well, and all that comes with it. We've got all sorts of things. I mean, it's like a tiny snapshot. We've got a really vibrant marketplace, but I think one of the main things is that we're creating a community, and they will be part of that community that is trying to make change. Because I think we're going to have work on the nature of change within the conference as well, because change takes time. And there is a period of time, I think, from what I'm witnessing, where it starts to get some traction. And it starts to get traction when people become involved and when people do the thing that they can do, and that they can spread. Like if we take the track as an example, if people take that and they spread that with all their network, then it will grow quicker. And I think the conference will do that. We'll bring people together, and then they will go out as part of this bigger picture that we are trying to achieve. Care England, we're collaborating with Care England on it as well. So we're hoping, that we'll have people that can truly change everything systemically as well. But all the people working with people with young onset dementia on the ground, and their voices are so important. They can bring their voices to it. We're going to have a system where they can share their opinion. We're going to be asking their opinion. So really, the more people we have there, the better, and the more difference we can make.
Have you ever encountered an adult or child's behaviour that has felt difficult, overwhelming, or challenging? Have you sometimes felt at a loss of what to do, or know that you didn't handle it quite right? People are complex and unpredictable, and their behaviour can be like the weather. We've all made the mistake of looking out the window and feeling safe to wear shorts, but 5 minutes later wishing for an umbrella. But what if, like a weatherman, you understood how humidity, temperature and pressure all come together to cause the weather, allowing you to better prepare, predict and respond, and prevent ever having a picnic ruined by a thunderstorm ever again? My book, called Targeting the Positive with Behaviours that Challenge, helps you to become the weatherman of behaviour. It provides you with a toolkit to increase competency, confidence, resilience and empathy, so you feel more assured about how to respond to distressed or dysregulated behaviours in others, including those affected by trauma, mental health, neurodiversity, learning disabilities or dementia. Build better connections, achieve de-escalation and improve outcomes for yourself and those you engage with my celebrated 6-stage target model, a step-by-step process to reduce distress for everyone. Discover my empowering, person-centered guide in Targeting the Positive, written by me, Andy Baker, available from online bookstores worldwide. Find a link in the description and order today.
As far as what kind of provisions do you feel across your ideal, or what is Dementia Forward's kind of ideal of what provisions there would be available for individuals with young onset?
Yeah. I'd like to see. So if we try and take that from pre-diagnosis, I'd like people to have an awareness of what might be happening to them and explore it. Before that, for people to understand brain health, for us all to try and keep our brains healthy, for the diagnostic system to be more appropriate, to work better, for young onset dementia to be coded so that actually we can get the proper figures. We can know exactly how many people there are out there, and therefore the funding later means that there's funding for appropriate services, for people not to feel isolated, for them to know that there is somewhere that they can go, for there to be meaningful activity across the board, that's just available. I could go on absolutely loads. And for people to be met where they are, for people to be supported in a way where there's people standing with them and not doing care to them, so that they're understood and they can maintain their identity. For when problems arise, for systems to be working together, for us all to be working together, all those things.
So obviously you've got some individuals that maybe experience this stigma still around that young onset dementia, that they think the diagnosis means that's the end. When you get diagnosed with a terminal illness, that tends to, I think people just go, well, that's it. I'm on my way to death. But obviously the journey for many with young onset is very, very different. And some, live a very, very full and active life. You mentioned earlier actually about like workplaces sometimes maybe being a little bit prejudicial towards young onset dementia. So yeah, what's your experiences around that?
So there's a lot of myths. There's a lot of myths where if a person is given a diagnosis, then immediately their driving license is taken away. That's a myth. It's person by person. That is an enormous change in people's lives. Enormous change to independence. I think there is a lot of stigma, but I think also when it comes to young onset, it's expectation as well. It's like when there's no real expectation when we're in our 30s, 40s and 50s that we would develop a dementia potentially, and also that you would become a carer of a person with dementia. There's no real expectation. And you could take that expectation, a few years ago, probably now, but you could take that expectation to the GPs and in our social care system, and it's not expected, and therefore it's nothing set up for it, and I think that makes it harder for people if they're experiencing symptoms or if they're needing to tell somebody, they're not meeting a mind where it's understood what's happening. And generally, I think people hold an idea in their heads that dementia is about memory only. And it's not about memory only, and especially for younger people, the presentations of the different diseases that people with young onset experience are really quite different to that. Frontal temporal lobe diagnosis can often be more about behaviour. So a person's social skills may alter, or they may lose empathy. We've known clients whose partner might have fallen, and they've stepped over them because they have absolutely no empathy left, because that's the part of the brain that's been damaged, and that's so hurtful, for the carer when they're obviously doing so much for a person. So I think there's that, and I think you mentioned work there, that that if there was more of an understanding in the workplace, then we would see less people being asked to leave work, because what we see is the majority of people being asked to leave work. And then we support, obviously, obviously we support that. But if a person is still in work and they get a diagnosis, then their work will make alterations so that they can continue to work. It will be considered a disability, so that they're there, therefore supporting them as well within work. And that's an enormous difference to families and to people. So yeah, I think there's a lot of work to be done on awareness, and then how sort of not only of young onset being in existence, being a thing, but also what people can then do. It's really interesting that what we find quite often is that it's a message that doesn't always land. So we have to repeat it and we have to go back. So fairly recently, I've had a member of our own staff, who really felt that it was much more of, people who are young at heart. There are so many crossovers with living loss and all sorts of crossovers that do affect older people as well. But this particular member of staff, I think, only recognised the crisis and how quickly people can get into crisis, and how it's different how a person views themselves, how they identify, and therefore what the provision around them needs to be. So actually, sometimes, even with people working with dementia all the time, it can be a difficult message to understand, I think, why it's different.
I think it is. It's always hard for us to imagine ourselves as any different circumstances or age, isn't it? So again, there's still that connection with dementia and elderly being. So somebody with dementia, we almost have this preconceived idea that they'll be sort of sat in a chair and wanting to do arts and crafts and listening to, let's have some show tunes with a singer coming in and things like that. But it's a case of, well, let's say that, I'm within that age bracket of being at risk, and my life is I go to the gym 3 times a week. I train in martial arts. I don't sit in a chair doing arts and crafts and listening to Vera Lynn. So why would that suddenly, just because my diagnosis has changed or I have a condition, then change what I enjoy, what I want to do, how I want to live my life? And I think that's difficult for people because of the connotations, maybe the preconceived ideas and prejudice that people. And this is the thing: it's not to discriminate or say people are bad, because we all have those prejudices, we all have those stereotypes, and therefore there is a stereotype about dementia. And that's where, the young onset doesn't fit that stereotype. So that's where it has to be kind of broken down and rebuilt.
And it's hard as well because, and again, it kind of comes to being more expensive. But it takes, so if you put people with young onset dementia into care, for example, then that care approach needs to be different. People want to be eating the kinds of foods, like ramen or pizza or things like that, rather than, more traditional foods that potentially older people might have been cooking themselves. And the music, as you say, but also how people strongly identify. So I know that, recently there's been a chap who is a part of the SAS. So physically so fit, and his answers to, his solutions to solving problems are to climb, and so there's presentations as well of people where there needs to be almost like an expectation, expect the unexpected, so that amount of flexibility and extra staff needed to be able to cope with the different presentations that people have, and to enable somebody to remain dignified. If somebody is wanting to go out, then there needs to be the ability for them to go out somewhere because they want to go for a walk or they want fresh air, and it's more about, I think, and this is where it's really difficult, and I just admire it so much that care environments often will have their own routines and ways of doing things that potentially older people may fit into more easily. Whereas a younger person, they're being dictated to a little bit more by what that younger person is bringing. And I think that's a whole different ballgame and really, really challenging. There's also the family as well. The families are generally more involved. Somebody's wife or husband, they want to be there. Their children want to be visiting. And so it brings a whole different set of
there's maybe going to be a lower level of acceptance as well, I should imagine, from both the individual themselves and from the family, as far as, whereas maybe there is an acceptance when you get older, for some individuals, not all, that, well, this is, my life is going to change. I know it's going to change because now I've got older. Whereas when that younger state is the case, but it shouldn't. It shouldn't be changing just because of this. So, I think it's evidence. Sorry, carry on.
I was only going to say that there's that expectation of your body will deteriorate when we get older. And also what we very sadly see is that the dementia can run its course in a younger person.
I think it's evidence there that when the system talks about person-centered care, it's still not quite getting what person-centered care is. It still falls into elements of people-centered care rather than person-centered care. But as you said, it's the expenses and the challenges of making it absolutely individualized as far as the service and the support and the access to information and stuff like
Very
that.
difficult, yeah.
So I've already mentioned, Karen, as far as working with ABLE training related to a course on young onset dementia. So also we're building that together. And what are you hoping, as far as professionals and families, what are you hoping they'll walk away from or work away with from training courses around this topic?
More knowledge, more understanding, an alteration in their approach, maybe, that and a kind of buy-in to who people with young onset dementia are, that they are absolutely individuals with individual needs, and there's an ability for us as professionals to make sure that our approach is respectful to that. And I think it's that message. It's that message that it's different for younger people. I think mainly because of the infrastructure around, but also the momentum of people's lives. But I think if they could take away that they can make a difference, however small, that would be amazing.
You kind of answered my next question that I had in there, which was that was a really good answer, really good. But I'm going to ask it anyway. As far as I think it's worthwhile. As far as what's the one thing that you'd want every GP, social worker, and carer to understand when they first meet somebody with young onset dementia?
I think I'd like them to be able to see truly the effect that it has, truly what's happening. I'm not sure if I can think of an example, but we had a lady recently who contacted us because she felt her diagnosis was just taking too long. She thought, I've got dementia and it's just taking too long. I just need to know now. I don't know if I've answered that question very well.
No, that's fine. Yeah, no, that was absolutely fine.
I think I want them, and I'm not saying they don't, that this isn't the case, because, our GPs and our medical system, people are amazing. But I think I would want them to recognise what they're seeing and how much of an effect it has on those people's lives. It's huge.
Yeah, and getting that support, and I suppose one element as well is making sure they know where to signpost to, as well. I say there's so many people who are, they receive the diagnosis and it's a little bit of like, well, so long, good luck. You go through the palliative care team, but they don't always know necessarily how to signpost them. And communities like the one that Dementia Forward kind of has created and building.
Yeah, and sorry, I mean that's absolutely crucial, because that I always sort of see it as our medical people go through the medical process of diagnosis, and some people don't get a diagnosis. We can support people, and we do support people, many people, without a diagnosis. But then there are charities like ours, and obviously for us, if people live in North Yorkshire and York, then if they call us and refer to us, then they will be given support and community and a bespoke support. But that well-being to help people live well is so important. I know people have spoken to me and described that kind of feeling of just falling off a cliff. What do I do now? Or standing back and waiting for all the people that are going to support them to flood in, and actually nobody comes and they need to go and find it themselves. And so at that kind of medical point, if people can be referred to Dementia Forward or charities like Dementia Forward, then it can make a huge difference in people's lives.
You obviously come across with so much passion around this, Karen, as far as the what you're doing and the work you're doing. I should imagine that there's been some elements of some heartbreaking moments on your journey a little bit. Would you mind just sharing an example of one of those for me?
So there are many, but we've supported one family. I'll take one family example. We've supported one family really from the point where he was asked to leave work. So this man, and this shows, I think, progression as well. So this man was asked to leave work, and he'd worked there for 30 years. He was just asked to leave because he was starting to make mistakes. He worked with IT and finance. He split up with his wife. He had to leave the family home. His mother died, and he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease all within 5 months. And his life just completely, all that routine, everything just kind of fell apart. So they were referred to us. We sort of scooped them up. He started to come to our Time Out Together group. So he developed a community with that. And his wife also was very supportive of him, even though they weren't a couple anymore. And again, we were able to support her with things that were cropping up. As he and we signposted to, the charity where they're able to take him out cycling, and he was cycling a lot. And then what we do is we work with the family as things alter and change. So as his presentation changed and it was no longer safe for him to go cycling, he started to come to our hubs. He was really happy at our hubs. And then he was living with his son, and they had he and his wife had a baby. So there was a baby in the household. And as our client's physicality changed, that became difficult within the house with a child. And we had a situation where it was really difficult for the social teams to understand what they were seeing, because what they saw, I think, was a lot of adults helping, but actually the pressure was enormous. Financially, it was extremely complicated because you had a split relationship, you had inheritance, you had people living in different houses that were owned by different members of the family, and really complex. This man went into care. His presentation altered. He was sectioned. He was taken into mental health ward. They struggled to medically get things under control for him. Extremely difficult for the family. He's now in care. He's fed by his wife. He is nonverbal. He's not physically active, but he's our friend. He's our, and so we continue to support the family as best we can. For what they need us for, we're there. But I think that shows how we stay with families. And I would say that's been the span of 4 or 5 years. So there's a speedy progression, and shows our privileged position, really, because as heartbreaking and awful as it is, and there are, I could tell you so many examples, really. Our position means that we can help. We can actually do something to help, even if it's just listening and just understanding and being able to kind of talk through possibilities, things like, this is happening today. Well, have you tried this? Or I spoke to somebody who tried that, or maybe this might work, or, and actually just sometimes a sounding board is enough for people, but yeah, there are many examples of it just being so hard at all stages. It can be really difficult. But having said that, we know that this man lived well. We know that when a member of our Time Out Together team visits him, he will smile. He will know that that's who we are. And that period of time was a real pleasure for him, a real connection and fun. And, there's a lot of awful jokes on those time out together groups and a lot of banter and enjoyment and connection. And, so for us, I always feel that it's a privilege that we can make the difference. And I think the training courses, they add to that. They give that to everybody as much as we possibly can.
That was a beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was generally, and it's as you said, you can hear the passion and what Dementia Forward are doing as far as creating those relationships and those connections for people who are maybe finding, as we spoke earlier in the talk, the disconnection from their life, from people and everything they're experiencing. So thank you for that. So for anybody out there who's maybe looking to find out more, to maybe help, to get involved, what would be ideal? What would individuals with young onset dementia, what are the things that they need the most from the community that is the world around them?
I think connection. I think being able to kind of share what's happening to them as a big part. I think because everybody's experience is so different, there is no family that experiences dementia the same at all for such a massive variety of reasons. Family dynamic and personality, and where the dementia might be affecting, what part of the brain it might be affecting, what age, there's so many factors that nobody experiences it the same. So I think, to have somebody on side, to have somebody to speak to, Dementia Forward, if you're in North Yorkshire and York, elsewhere in the country, there are charities that are there specifically to support people. And I think I would reach out and hope that people would have support there. I think if people are experiencing symptoms and they're not sure what to do, then again, reach out and don't be alone. And I think so I can give you our contact details. If they wanted to ring Dementia Forward and they're in York and North Yorkshire, then our number is 03300 578 592. So they can contact us in that way or via our website, which is www.dementiaforward.org.uk.
We'll make sure we include all those in the description and the show notes as well, so people can find. And obviously, there's connections on our website as well to try and make sure they find you.
And to come to the conference too, to be a part of that conversation. If you're a person with lived experience and you've got something to say, come along to the conference. And if you're a person working with people with young onset dementia or would like to work with people with young onset dementia or just want to know more, then come to the conference, and be a part of it, I would say as well. To make a change, we need change on every level, and we need 100%. Help. I mean, there's loads of people. There's a lot more happening. There's much more traction now. But yeah, if people could be involved, that'd be brilliant.
I know there's a lot of people obviously within the community and people I'm speaking to that, are wanting to speak up and speak out. And I think it's definitely a bit of as you mentioned earlier, that the momentum is maybe starting to build in the right direction. And I know there's some, there's some work that still needs doing at the top of the hierarchy of the powers that be to kind of, as you said, recognize it as a codable condition so that they can get the numbers sorted and see where the funding actually needs to go and the support actually needs to go. But thank you so much for joining us today, Karen. It was really a genuinely wonderful conversation. And we'll obviously, the community, the connection and the partnership between Able Training and Dementia Forward, we're hoping will keep growing and we'll keep the message out there. But I'm looking forward to the conference, and we'll make sure that if anybody's interested in that, we'll put the links to that in all the in the show notes, descriptions, and everything like that. But thank you. Absolutely my pleasure. So if you're listening and watch this and anything that we've spoken about you found useful, interesting or important, and there's anybody in your life that maybe you want to raise the awareness, either because they may be struggling or showing symptoms, or you already know that they need some additional support, please like, comment and share this podcast so that this word can get out to more people in the community. Thank you.